It's an interesting time for business. Tariff and trade policies are dynamic, supply chains are squeezed, and cash flow, it's tighter than ever. If your business can't adapt in real time, you are in a little bit of hurt. So how do you get full visibility and adapt in real time? Over 42,000 businesses trust NetSuite by Oracle, your AI-powered business management suite. It brings accounting, financial management, inventory, and HR all under one roof. NetSuite is the #1 cloud ERP for a reason. It's your single source of truth, giving you the data and control you need to move quickly. Real-time forecasting helps you move into the future with confidence, and with AI built in, you can automate the busy work and focus on strategy. NetSuite helps you see what's stuck, what it's costing you, and how to pivot fast. If I were running a business with a lot of moving parts, I'd use NetSuite for full control over everything. Tame the chaos with NetSuite. If your revenues are at least in the 7 figures, download the free ebook, Navigating Global Trade, 3 Insights for Leaders at netsuite.com/SPI. That's netsuite.com/SPI. The perfect product launch. It's the goal for every brand marketer. High heat, fast sellout, and fans posting recipes like trophies. What do Sydney Sweeney's soap drop, Taylor Swift's tickets, and your next launch have in common? Well, they're not bought, they're bragged about. Fanfare turns your drop into a moment. Fanfare cues real fans, blocks bots, and builds launch experiences worth screenshotting. Want hype without the heartbreak? Get Fanfare's 5-step hype drop playbook with our proven success formula and make your next launch unforgettable at fanfare.io/playbook. Again, fanfare.io/playbook.
Building your second brain is synonymous with using your second brain, right? You've probably seen like these beautiful, Notion dashboards that just look just exquisite. If it looks aesthetically pleasing, it's probably not that useful. The way that you build a second brain is one project at a time and taking it through each of these 4 steps. Capturing information, organizing that information, distilling that information, and then expressing it. The way that you know you have a second brain and the way you know it's working is when you can reliably deliver better work more consistently with less effort and less stress. That is the only measure of success.
Today we're speaking with Tiago Forte, somebody whose name that I've heard so often during the past couple of years because he has a program called Building a Second Brain. And by second brain, I don't mean an organic brain that you could hold that is connected to yours. That might come in the future. And I know people like Elon Musk are working on things like Neuralink and whatnot. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the best way to capture, to organize, to distill, and then express yourself with the things that are happening around you. Everything from books that you read. How do we capture the best moments of that book and be able to recall those things later, not just from memory, but by building literally a digital organizational tool. And this is more than just a fancy record-keeping situation. There's a lot of utility here. We go through a number of different examples. And I personally know a number of people who've been helped by Tiago and people who are at a very high level who use this for all kinds of different things, from surgeons who use it for patient record-keeping to the stay-at-home mom who's keeping track of dinner and all the other functions that their kids need to go through. This could be a huge life-changing episode for you. This was definitely inspirational for me. So I'm happy to introduce Tiago from buildingasecondbrain.com. Hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Smart Passive Income Podcast, where it's all about working hard now so you can sit back and reap the benefits later.
And now your host. He and his business partner Matt share the same birthday and birth year.
Pat Flynn.
With running your own business, legal questions always come with the territory. Like, can I use this contract or agreement? What do I do if a client doesn't pay? Am I even structured the right way for taxes? Instead of Googling your way through legal landmines, imagine having a law firm ready to address your business's legal needs without the sticker shock. That's what you get with Legal Shield's small business plans. Legal Shield helps entrepreneurs access real legal help on contract reviews, collection letters, business formation guidance, and even help navigating IRS audits. Members can schedule consultations, upload documents through the app, and get support from a provider law firm that knows small business laws in your state. Plus, consultations on taxes or trademarks help you stay ahead of potential problems. And if a client is late on a payment, Legal Shield steps in with professional collection letters so you can protect your hard-earned revenue, all for a fraction of the price of hiring a lawyer on your own. Go to LegalShield.com/SPI or call 833-570-9980 to learn more and get big business legal support without a big business budget. That's LegalShield.com/SPI. While DIY website tools are everywhere, most fall short on design and performance. Hit publish. Framer ships your site worldwide in seconds. No code, no compromises. Framer is a powerful, user-friendly platform that delivers developer-level results without writing a single line of code. Make your designs move and convert with Framer. Framer brings your site to life with powerful animations, dynamic content handling, and a design-first approach that helps your site stand out. Framer is the design-first, no-code website builder that lets anyone ship a production-ready site in minutes. Browse hundreds of pixel-perfect templates or even design something of your own on a totally blank canvas. Add bold animations like appear effects, text effects, scroll and looping animations, and much more in seconds. And it's free to start. The built-in AI handles the heavy lifting of generating starter layouts and can even translate your entire site to any language. On the back end, you'll get responsive breakpoints, built-in hosting, a flexible CMS, and privacy-friendly analytics. Ready to build a site that looks hand-coded without hiring a developer? Launch your site for free at framer.com and use code SPI to get your first month of pro on the house. That's framer.com, promo code SPI. Framer.com, promo code SPI. Rules and restrictions may apply. Tiago, welcome to the Smart Passive Income Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Good to be here, Pat.
I'm excited because I've heard your name a lot over the past couple of years. And whenever anybody hears the phrase building a second brain, obviously it gets people to wonder, what does that exactly mean? And I know that's the name of your brand and your program. And I've heard a lot of my friends in my mastermind groups talk about it as well. What exactly does that mean, building a second brain?
So a second brain is a knowledge management system. That's the kind of slightly more boring technical term. And it's really, think of the like a journal or a diary or like a notebook that you might carry around from place to place. That's usually like the closest, thing that people already do. And people, I think you generally know what you write in there. You write down thoughts and reflections. You analyze worries and fears. You write down ideas you have. You maybe write down some quotes that you read in a book or listened to on a podcast. You write down reminders or things you need to buy or books you want to read or places you want to visit. It's just this kind of like free form canvas that is private, that is very kind of casual, where you externalize. You just get things going on up here and you put them into external form. Now, get that practice and elevate it. Make it digital. And suddenly, it gains all these new incredible capabilities. Once it's digital, it is searchable. You can say, hey, what have I ever thought about, online marketing? Give me my full history of thinking on the subject. You can link. You can link between notes. You can also link externally to the web. You can add tags. You can resort and reorganize. You can add multimedia, not just text, but images, graphics, links, bookmarks. So you're basically getting all the superpowers of technology and applying them not to like public content like social media, but to your own private thinking, ideas, and projects.
That reminds me, it's really interesting. When I started my entrepreneurial journey, it actually started as a result of a test that I took in the architecture world. It was called a LEED exam. And I had actually, before I got laid off, I had built a website to basically be my second brain, but for that particular exam. And it was a website specifically because I knew I could link to things, I could keep track of things, and I can go back to that. I could recall that information during lunch if I wanted to, or if I was at home. It was all there for me. Little did I know that because I made it public, Google and other people found it, which was a huge blessing and started this journey. But I remember how useful that was. And it's interesting. I never thought about doing that for just like my life, right? Because this is more than just about keeping track of things for your business or your marketing or your products and such, right? Like what all could be in this? And can you give us some maybe specific use cases for it?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is kind of a challenge also because, what we're talking about here is a general purpose information system, right? It's kind of hard to wrap your head around because most software that we use is single purpose, right? We're using ConvertKit to manage our email marketing. We're using Airtable for our, CRM. We're using usually one piece of software for one purpose. I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about this general purpose, almost like knowledge library that you can use for everything from the most mundane daily things, managing your grocery list, creating a packing list for your travel that you reuse each time, keeping track of your kids' schedules, which is something that I'm starting to do. We had our first kid a couple of years ago, all the way to these really, fancy professional uses like publishing content consistently on your blog or your podcast, developing new products and services like you mentioned, managing teams, right? As a manager, you have to keep track of information related to all these people you're managing. I've had people take the course who are surgeons. They use it to manage their patient notes. I've had NASA engineers use it, not so much to design satellites, that requires more heavy duty systems, but like their own personal to-do list as an employee, of NASA, they're using their digital notes. So it really takes a bit of time to really think, okay, what are the needs in my life that are both a bit challenging, that I have some challenges with, that require me to manage large volumes of information, and that I want to do it well and I want to do effectively. And that is usually where to start.
I think the biggest struggle I had when attempting to do something like this was there was just so many things I could put in there, right? Everything from traveling and places I want to go, places I've been, places at those places that I was at that are memories that I want to keep with me, to the business stuff, to my hobbies and fishing and keeping track of, my personal best largemouth basses that I've caught. And there's a million things I can put in there. For those of us who are curious about this, whether they check out your program or not, what is the first step, if you could help us understand that?
So the very, very first step is you have to get familiar with a notes app. This is the category of software that I really think is kind of the only option. Now, there's tons of options. I have a YouTube video where I quickly kind of review over 60 notes apps. And that video is part of if people out there are curious about which notes app should I use, which is the most common question I receive, that video is part of a 4-part series free on my YouTube channel where I just take you step by step through the decision-making process. So I recommend people check that out. But basically, you need to just get familiar with it. Usually your phone or your tablet or whatever already has one, right? If you're on iOS, you have Apple Notes. Android has an equivalent, I don't know if it's called Android Notes, but it depends on your version of Android. And of course, you can download for free, like spending no money, Evernote, Notion, Obsidian, Simple Note, One Day. There's countless options. But just like try it, just like you would like get a notebook in a store and kind of just like ruffle the pages and turn it upside down and touch it and feel it. Do that with the app. Try writing some stuff, try moving a note around, try adding a title, add a link, just play with it. That I would say is the very first step.
Gotcha. And picking one and sticking with it is really key, right? I found that I was kind of continually going back and forth between features that this one had, features that this one had, and then this one was way too complicated, so I tried something more simple, but it didn't have the features I need. And so I recommend checking out your video series, and we'll pop a link in the description for that. But I would assume that, pick one and just go with it, right?
That is exactly it. That's exactly it. There's something with productivity and especially note-taking apps where not only is it easy to switch from one to the other, but at that moment that you switch, there's actually a sense of relief. It's like you have your messy notes. You're like, I don't know how to make sense of this. Let me just switch to this other thing. This blank, beautiful, clean space.
It's like when I buy a new notebook at Target or something, it's like, the possibilities of what I could do with this, but then it just goes through the same cycle again sometimes.
Exactly. It can create a cycle. It creates a cycle of constantly moving from one thing to another, which is fine. You can do whatever you want, but you completely miss out on the compounding benefits of growing this knowledge collection over time. You also never really get to know any particular app. So yeah, sometimes there's roadblocks and challenges, but often people have figured out solutions and you have to stick with it a bit, like any commitment. Actually, in that series, the 4th video is called your first 30 days with your notes app. And I give you like a set of almost like little experiments and habits that you can try. Stick with it for 30 days. And at the end of 30 days, if you want to switch, that's fine.
Love it. Another analogy to use in this building a second brain function is similar to like your own personal Google, right? The ability to put in a few keywords into this notes app to find something and to recall something. And I find that technology is just so useful for things like that. And it's not just when things happen, like with a calendar or a list of to-dos. It's everything interconnected with each other that is so fascinating with this. And we'll talk about how this begins to turn into something even more beautiful. But I do want to go into your story a little bit. Like, why did this or how did this become your thing? When did building a second brain come about? What's the origin story behind it?
I wish I could say, I'm just such a curious and ambitious individual. I just decided to do this for my own benefit. But no, I was forced. I was basically forced onto this path because of a medical condition. When I was 22, I was in college at San Diego State University studying business. I was working at the Apple Store, teaching people how to use computers. And one day, for no apparent reason, no like out of the blue, I started having this pain and tension in my throat and my neck. Ignored it, hoped it would go away, but then it didn't. Over the months and years, it just got worse and worse and worse, to the point that I would wake up almost unable to speak because the pain and tension was so severe. I had trouble speaking, had trouble laughing, singing was all but impossible. It was like a dark hole of just, I eventually, just despaired, went into depression, withdrew from the people in my life, from the communities in my life, really just the darkest period of my entire life. And eventually I saw a dozen different doctors, no solution, no even clue as to the cause, much less any solution that they could offer, until they offered me this medication called carbamazepine, which is a very powerful anti-seizure medication that basically just numbs your entire nervous system, like head to toe. It's like the nuclear option, just turn it off, right? And I took it, and it helped a bit, but also caused really terrible side effects, including severe short-term memory loss. I started completely forgetting conversations I had, books I read. I would take trips, vacations, and a couple months later have no memory of them, which was really my introduction to this idea, which I now believe that memory is everything. I gained such a deep appreciation for memory. You are nothing without your memories, right? Your memories of your family, your childhood, your past, your experiences. Without your memories, you're a different person. It's who you are. And that realization just made me so committed to saving not everything, but the parts that were most important. And so to finish the story, I reached this point, this realization that no one was going to come save me, right? I kept going from doctor to doctor, like, just give me the pill, just give me the surgery, give me the silver bullet solution that is going to make this go away. And finally, I just realized my life is not going to go the way that I want it unless I take control of this situation. And so I walked over to the receptionist at the doctor's office, asked for my complete patient record. She kind of quizzically looked at me. She handed me this giant stack. It was like a foot thick of my patient record. And that's where it all started. I started scanning it, digitizing it. Once it was digital, I could organize it. I could highlight the parts that were most relevant and interesting. I just started connecting the dots and kind of taking ownership and agency of my own treatment. And what I eventually found after doing that for a while is that this wasn't like an illness or an infection that could just be cured. It was what's called a functional condition, which is where a part of your body is just kind of not working right. And I developed, in collaboration with my doctors, of course, a series of lifestyle changes to my diet, my sleep. Basically, I started doing self-care, which had not been a thing for me, and found resolution to my condition just through understanding myself and what my body needed.
Wow. What year was this when this all happened?
Started in 2007.
2007. Also, go Aztecs, by the way. And so when did this turn into something that you wanted to share with others? And how did that begin?
Yeah, it took so long. I never imagined that it would lead to this methodology, this system that could be taught to others. So just to kind of recap it briefly, for a few years, it was just a way to manage my patient records. Then I thought, well, why don't I just use the same approach to my studies? My last year at San Diego State, I did, and actually graduated with honors, which had never happened. So I was like, oh, worked again. Then I used it to apply for the Peace Corps, this, overseas volunteer program, got in, became an English teacher in Eastern Ukraine for a couple of years, where I used it again to basically plan and manage my teaching. Then I came back to the US, moved to San Francisco, used it to apply for my first job, got that job, used it in my job. So over the period of a decade, really, I just kept using it for one thing after another. It was almost a full decade before I created the course and thought, hey, this has worked in almost every area of my life. Let me turn it into a thing that I teach. And since then, it's just kind of taken off over the past 5 years or so.
Now, it on the surface sounds just like a really cool record-keeping system. But I know there's a system. You'd mentioned that word a few times. Can you give us a overview of like how this actually works?
Yes, absolutely. So I think we need to talk about code.
Let's do it.
Which is when I say the methodology, this is the 4-part methodology. The main, like the core chapters in my book are CODE, which stands for capture, organize, distill, and express. And the thing I'll kind of highlight here is Building your second brain is synonymous with using your second brain. It's synonymous with using information. Sometimes people get in this mindset that they spend all this time and energy creating, architecting this beautiful system. Right? You've probably seen like these beautiful, Notion dashboards that just look just exquisite. Or like there's a YouTube video, my 5-hour, Obsidian system. And it just looks so sophisticated and so impressive. I really advise people to be wary of that. Like if it looks aesthetically pleasing, it's probably not that useful, is kind of one rule of thumb. The way that you build a second brain is by getting one project at a time. And my approach is very project-centric, projects and goals, and taking it through each of these 4 steps. Capturing information, organizing that information, distilling that information, and then expressing it. So we can step through those if you'd like, but it's like I often say, completed projects are the oxygen of your second brain. The way that you know you have a second brain and the way you know it's working is when you can reliably deliver better work more consistently with less effort and less stress. That is the only measure of success, not how nice it looks.
So don't just organize to be organized or to make it look good or to just be there necessarily in case of an emergency. It's something that will then impart itself into your life and be useful for you on the daily and be able to, like you said, capture, organize, distill, and then express. And I'm interested in hearing more detail about each of those things, especially express. Like I don't know necessarily what that means. So why don't we go kind of step by step here, starting with collect. And you had mentioned note-taking apps and such. Is there a favorite that you have or use? And then how do we properly collect this information, or what is it that we're collecting?
Awesome. Let's do it. Capture is really just a fancy word for writing things down. This is in some ways the most challenging step. Information comes at us from different places. It has to be taken in, sometimes translated from paper form or external form into digital form. And that's why I like the word capture. It's almost like it's more than just passively allowing it to kind of just hit you. You have to capture. You have to go like, no, that tidbit. It's like having a net and capturing a butterfly, I personally use Evernote. I've used it for 10 years. In some ways, Evernote is like the OG. I don't know. I'm sure you remember a decade ago, like the Evernote fervor.
Oh, yeah.
But the cool thing is now there's so many options. And I'd say that by far the most common are Notion, Obsidian, and then just the default Apple Notes, Android Notes, along with Evernote. Those are probably the 4 most common by far. And so capture, there's actually a whole bunch of different capture methods. Everything from copy and paste. You can really just copy a passage, paste it into your notes, to web clippers. Evernote and many other apps have like a little extension in your browser that allows you to say, save web page. There's ways of forwarding emails. If you have an important email, you can just forward it directly into your second brain. You can use an app like a read later app, like Instapaper or Pocket, where you make a highlight and then just that highlight gets exported to your second brain. There's a lot of different ways that mostly just depends on how you consume content.
Gotcha. So capture, and the use case of reading a book, seeing a passage you want to collect and pop somewhere. Awesome. What other things in our lives are worth capturing? I
think the most important thing is, and this is sometimes a huge mental shift for people, you don't want to be an information hoarder. Capturing has actually become so easy to hit save, capture, download, export, import. And actually, many people go through a hoarding phase, which might be good, might be useful to like capture all the things. And then eventually you realize, oh, shoot, this just creates tons of more work down the line to process and analyze and review. Once they're past that sort of binge phase, you realize you only have to capture like 1% of the information in any given source. Like really, I would use 1% as a rule of thumb. Read a book. Don't save 10, 20, 30% of the book in highlights. Like you've just saved the entire book. That small number, like I always say, the value is not evenly distributed, right? In a book, there's like an 80-20 or like a 199. The value is concentrated in certain passages. Only save those passages. In a podcast, the value is not evenly distributed. Save only the quotes that are most truly valuable. In a class you take, a vacation you take, a conversation you have, meetings you have, there's always this 1% of just like the true gems, right? And that's what I recommend people save.
Is there a question we can ask ourselves, like a Marie Kondo style question? Like, does this spark joy for me that can allow us to filter what we bring into our second brain and sort of what we leave out. Because similar to like when you have a house, the bigger the house, just you're going to fill in that space with more stuff just because you have it. And digital, the space is almost unlimited. Like, I'm glad we're talking about this because hoarding information is a huge problem for sure. But do you have any questions or filters we can ask ourselves before we move on to the next step?
Yeah, it's such a perceptive question. It's true because, yeah, you could in theory collect infinitely. Just buy more hard drives, upgrade your Google storage, right? They'll happily enable that behavior.
Right, exactly.
So the question I use is, does it resonate? Does it resonate? And what I mean by resonate is, does it stir something in you? Does it stir something? You can think of it like an echo in your soul. You can think of it like what makes the goosebumps appear on your arm, the hair stand up on the back of your neck, what makes you surprised, what makes your eyes widen. And what that all has to do with is the decision of what to capture. This is just this is a recommendation. I really don't recommend making it logically, making it rationally. Like sometimes people want a checklist, the criteria for what to capture. And here's the thing. If you make capturing a highly mentally taxing, rational exercise, you'll have no time and energy left for the more important steps, which are the following steps. And so a way to kind of capture without using much energy is basically to use your emotions, use your intuition. Your body will actually have these little signs and signals when you come across a piece of information that moves you. That is the perfect criteria for when to save it, to capture it.
Such a good question. Does it resonate? If it doesn't, why even capture it? Right? And that's going to be a personal thing for every single individual, which I love. Let's move on. I believe it's organize. How do we organize this stuff?
So you capture and you're having fun and it's a whole new world, capturing. And then eventually you run into a big problem, which is you've amassed a lot of stuff. And at a certain point, it needs some kind of order, some kind of structure. And so I have an approach to organizing, which is actually the single most popular part of the second brain universe, which is called para. Para is a way to organize not just your digital notes, but your entire digital life that really, I can say, changes people's lives. It's another 4-part framework. I really love 4-part frameworks.
And acronyms.
And acronyms, yes. Which stands for projects, areas, resources, and archives. Every single piece of digital content in your life can fit into one of these 4 categories, which is why you can use it across all the different software programs you use.
Projects, areas, resources, and archives. Are we organizing every individual capture as it's being captured, or are you literally capturing a whole bunch of things and then having another moment to then para them?
Great question. You want to keep those steps separate.
Okay.
This is crucial. And it's a trap because you'll be capturing something and be like, oh, well, I already know where this goes. Why don't I save time and just send it to that place? It's a trap.
It's a trap. Thank you for the Star Wars reference, by the way.
Yes. It's a trap because maybe you'll do that once or twice, but in general, you won't have the time or don't want to spend the energy to. It's like when you write something down, you don't want to have to make 2 decisions, what to write down and where it goes. If you can even make 1 decision, it's like a miracle, right? So just capture stuff, leave the organizing to your future self.
Right. Plus, if you're capturing based on emotion and gut and what resonates with you, that's a different part of the brain than the more logical organization part of the brain. Oftentimes when I'm teaching people to create content, get your creative side first. Don't even worry about editing. Don't worry about punctuation or anything. That comes later. So this sounds very similar. And so in organization, projects, areas, resources, archives, every capture can be put into one of those categories. And then is that like a tag? Is that like a folder? Or and we just kind of drop it in there? Or do we bring any other information along with it?
You can use the 2 main kind of organizing methods are folders and tags. And you can really use either one. That's why this is such a universal, it's a platform agnostic system, is the way that you add that structure. You can do it however you want. But it's sort of like my assertion is that as long as you know this piece of information is related to this project, this piece of information is related to this area of my life, as long as you can see all the notes related to those things in one place, that is actually what matters for taking action.
Awesome. And obviously, inside of your program, you go into way more detail about this, more examples and whatnot, but we only have so much time here. So I definitely want to continue on. And let's talk about, so we've talked about capturing and then organization, putting them into one of 4 parts, It's either a project or an area of life. By area of life, do you mean like finances or relationships or hobbies and things like that?
Exactly.
Got it. Resources, more of like, here is a database or a knowledge base of things I just need to know. And then archives, what's archives specifically? Just random things?
Archives is everything from the previous 3 categories that is no longer active.
Ah,
You don't want to delete it. There's no reason to delete anything, but you'd want it kind of out of sight, out of mind.
okay. So really it's 3, and then sort of a 4th is a capture for things that aren't relevant anymore. Okay, cool. Let's move on to the D in code, which is
Distill.
distill. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this is the step that people most often miss or don't even know about, right? Like the other words are kind of more common. Oh, capture, yeah, organize, express. It makes sense. But like, what is distill? What is this whiskey here? But it's this crucial missing step, which is this. If you only ever capture and organize, if you only ever accumulate, no methodology or framework or app can save you. You will eventually be buried like any hoarder in just mountains and mountains of stuff. You can't only accumulate. Distill is actually, it's kind of the opposite of capture. You're looking at your notes, let's say your notes on a book, and you're actually choosing, you're making the decision, which parts of this note are the most important. You can think of it like distilling the note down to its essence, or distilling it down to the key points or takeaways or lessons or action steps, which takes some energy and takes some decision making. You have to actually decide this point is less important, this point is more important. But what that ultimately does is make it, and this is the test of success, if you can look at a note and in like 5 or 10 seconds, you can get the gist of that note and understand what it's trying to tell you and what the relevant, next step is.
I love it. I'm imagining the show Hoarders on TLC. And so capturing is the craziness of all the things in our home, right? And it's just an absolute mess. Organizing them is still having the same amount of stuff. It's just now in neat piles, and it's sort of, here are the magazines, here are the electronics, and here are the other. Distill might be looking at that pack of magazines and going like, well, why do I want this here? And what does it actually mean? And so I can imagine in the analogy, maybe I just need one of them instead of 100 of them, because it gives me that feeling that I had when I was a kid and picked up Nintendo Power. I just need one to kind of bring those feelings back, because that's really what this does. I don't need all of them. And so now I can get some more space in my life. And also I can now place that one magazine somewhere and know where it is. Is that kind of right on this sort of line of what we're trying to do here?
It's a perfect analogy. Yeah, it's like, and it's interesting. Notice that distill depends on organize, because let's say you have your sneakers, just like, Marie Kondo, like the shows that you see, it is only when the person sees all the sneakers in one place that they have the confidence and the security to say, okay, maybe I don't need like 5 pairs of identical green sneakers.
Right. That's true. What about the sneakerhead, though, who it's their passion, it's their hobby, it's their obsession? I imagine that when accumulating a lot of this information, it can feel similar. It's like, how do you battle that need and that pull from not wanting to distill, if that makes sense? Like, how do we manage that? I imagine that this is a very difficult thing because it's pretty new for a lot of us.
It is. It's such a challenge. Yeah, it goes deep. I think it's like when you choose what is most important, you're kind of automatically discarding something, right? When you decide to keep a slide in your slide presentation, you have to kind of either de-emphasize or skip or delete other slides. That's making decisions, and it's scary. It's very scary because you feel FOMO. You're like, well, what if I'm making the wrong decision? What if that thing that's being discarded or archived is actually the most important and I'm making a mistake?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you can think of the steps of code as a whole process for assuaging the fear of FOMO for a few reasons. Think about the steps we've gone through. First of all, you can always go back to the original source. When you capture something, most capture tools allow you to save like the URL. So worst comes to worst, you can just click, it usually says source or original, click the link, go all the way back to the beginning. Second, when you distill, you're actually not deleting anything. So distill, like practically, is just going through a note and highlighting the main points. You're not deleting the points that are not highlighted. You're leaving them just as they are. And I often find sometimes I'll go back to a note and I'll be like, I did this wrong. I highlighted these points and maybe those were useful at the time, but now life has changed and these other points are different. And I'll change the highlights. I'll unhighlight what was there before and do something different. So it's like you're actually never throwing anything away at any step of building a second brain. You're always just emphasizing certain points more than others.
That's huge. That's a huge differentiator there. So I appreciate that, because FOMO is definitely a huge thing that gets us to do things or keep things that perhaps we don't need, or stops us from actually taking any action at all. And express, that's the last part of this. Tell me what that means here in this context of building a second brain, having better organization, better ability to recall what's there. What does express actually mean here?
This kind of speaks to the question that is at the back of everyone's minds as they hear about this, which is like, why? Like, why am I doing all this? What is the reason? What is the purpose? Out of all the things I could be spending my time on, is, a second brain really it? And I guess I have an opinion here. You can use a second brain. It has a lot of benefits. It makes you more productive. You can understand yourself better. You can, reuse thinking from the past because it's written down. But I believe, like, this really came from my medical condition. Having my voice taken away to a certain extent for a period, it was just this shocking realization. I'm a pretty introverted person. I like to spend time alone. I like to spend a lot of time alone. But having my voice taken away just made me realize that self-expression is a fundamental human need. Self-expression. It's not like high up on Maslow's hierarchy, like, oh, when I solve all the other problems, I'll get to self-expression. As humans, we have to express ourselves to survive, I believe. Even on the most mundane level of telling our spouse what happened today at work, talking to our kids about what happened today at school. We are fundamentally social beings. So for me, the reason for doing all this capturing, organizing, distilling is to express yourself better, more often, more compellingly, more effectively, more meaningfully. Like, what is information? It is fodder for communication or collaboration in some way. And we live in such a collaborative, social, cooperative world now that a second brain is a way for you to do that better.
That's so deep on a philosophical level and psychological level. For the longest time, I don't have everything as organized as I want it to be, but I'm getting there. And thank you for the inspiration here today. But one clear example of exactly what you just spoke about was that I was taught a while back as I started to do a lot of public speaking. And I want to thank Ramit Sethi for this idea of creating a story bank. So capturing, to use your term, different moments of my life so that I can recall them later and present them on stage. If there's a lesson or something interesting that might happen that can sort of support a point I'm trying to make in my talk, I now have this ability to go back into my story bank without having to sort of sit there and kind of go, oh, what was that thing that happened, or it's on the tip of my tongue, or literally completely forget these little things. Case in point, there was a moment where when my son was maybe 4 or 5, he wanted to bring an iPad into the car on our little trip that we were doing, going to the store. And that little random thing that happened, I actually captured that moment and was able to distill it into something that became a huge story that I've told on stage before, to talk about knowing who your audience is. Because the whole idea was, he was trying to sell me on using the iPad, but every time I asked him, well, why should I let you? It was always about him. But when he made it about me, when he said, well, I'll be able to stay quiet and we can drive a little bit more safely. In fact, he was playing Minecraft. So he said, well, if I learn how to build better buildings, I can help you become a better architect. So I rewarded him that day. He asked me the next day, but I said no, because he already cashed in that card. But you see, that little tiny story, I was able to capture that, distill it, turn it into something that had like an arc to it, add some comedic elements to it, all within Evernote. And now at dinner parties, I tell that story every once in a while. Now, when I'm on stage and I'm trying to communicate something and make it really impactful, I can go into that story bank and find stories like that. And there are hundreds of them in there. I don't remember most of them. But when I want to find something that's tagged with audience building, boom, I can find those 5 or 6 stories and I can just figure out, okay, well, who's my target audience? Oh, well, there's a lot of parents in the audience. Okay, I'm going to use that story about my son in there, and I know that's going to hit home. So hopefully this gives you an example, those of you listening, of a direct application along the lines of communication. And of course, the better that you communicate and the more confident you are with that, the more relationships that you might have, the more opportunities open up for you, the more doors seem to open. So I hope that helps.
It's such a clear example. And I think it's like advertisers and online marketers often, they're just like, this is a swipe file. Like a swipe file has been around since like the 40s, They instantly get it. But I can sort of imagine people listening to this like, oh, I am not an online marketer, or I don't have an online business. But I kind of want to speak to that. It's like, stories are the most powerful form of human communication. Like, we think in stories, not in facts and data. So like, think about, for whatever job that you might have listening to this, like the power of bringing up a story in a meeting with your boss about a customer success that you had, the power of bringing up a story with your kids to teach them a lesson, a life lesson, the power of bringing up a story in, a memo you're writing to your team, that illustrates, what you're trying to do. Like, stories are not limited to certain people. Online marketers are at the forefront, but imagine if you had not just a story bank, but an example bank, an anecdote bank, an example bank, a slide bank, a statistic bank. Now, those don't have to be separate banks. They can all be one general bank of everything. And that is really what a second brain is.
Tiago, this has been incredible and hugely inspirational for me, and I'm sure everybody else listening. Where can people go to learn more about your program and you, and where would you prefer to direct people today?
Yeah, you can find out everything at buildingasecondbrain.com.
Buildingasecondbrain.com. How did you come up with that name? Because it's so just eye-catching and memorable.
I was at a cafe with my friend Raphael in LA about 6 years ago, and I just thought, I can't think of a name. How about how to create your personal knowledge processing system? And he was like, no, dude, this, like, from what you're telling me, this seems like it's your second brain. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Nailed it. I'm glad you didn't name it that other thing, because I already forgot what it was.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you, Tiago. Buildingasecondbrain.com. Thank you for the help, and looking forward to more conversations with you in the future.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate it.
All right, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Tiago Forte. You can find him again at buildingasecondbrain.com. Wasn't that an epic conversation? I'm so thankful that Tiago showed up, and of course, we were talking about the power of storytelling. He told some great stories, not just about the origin of building a second brain, and at the end there, the name of it, which is really funny, but also just what this could literally do for you and your life, and the organization of it, especially as more and more information just comes our way, to be able to capture the right things, to be able to organize it, distill it so we find the right parts that are most useful for us, and then express ourselves from it, is absolutely game-changing. So again, buildingasecondbrain.com. If you want to get the links and all the resources mentioned, including the video series that he mentioned, we'll link to that as well in the show notes, which you can find at smartpassiveincome.com/session607. Again, smartpassiveincome.com/session607. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. And whatever note-taking app you are using, make sure to just stick with it. You got this. Start out small. You can build out this web and this sort of database for yourself. And the other thing that we didn't talk about was just how useful that might be to share. For example, if you create a database and you want to share it with your kids so that they can sort of understand what's going on in the future, it's a great way to sort of organize this for legacy purposes as well, or sharing with team members for certain components of it as well for your business. So a lot of applications here, even more than we've talked about. You can find out more at buildingasecondbrain.com. Thank you so much. Looking forward to sharing with you more information in the next episode with another guest. And we have some Friday follow-up episodes coming up. We got a lot of great stuff coming here. We are in the 600s now, well into the 600s. Thank you for those of you who are listening. And if you've listened for a while, I appreciate you. And if you're brand new, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. Thank you so much. Take care. Peace out. And as always, Team Flame for the win. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Smart Passive Income Podcast at smartpassiveincome.com. I'm your host, Pat Flynn. Our senior producer is Sarah Jane Hess. Our series producer is David Grabowski. And our executive producer is Matt Gartland. Sound editing by Duncan Brown. The Smart Passive Income Podcast is a production of SPI Media. We'll catch you in the next session. More people dream about building their own business and being their own boss rather than retiring early. But a majority of them never even take the first steps to register the business. Why? Because starting a business can feel overwhelming. With legal forms, paperwork, finances, it's a lot. And that's where Taylor Brands comes in. Taylor is a complete business builder designed to make launching your business simple and stress-free. You can register your LLC in just minutes, keeping your personal and business assets separate from day one. And from there, you can get access to everything you need to get off the ground, from legal documents, licenses and permits, invoicing and bookkeeping tools, and even a 100-day business coaching program to help you hit the ground running. You'll also get a free personalized business plan, branding tools, and so much more. And of course, our listeners get an exclusive 35% discount to get started. Just head to taylorbrands.com/SPI. That's TAILORBRANDS.com/SPI. Stop dreaming, start building with Taylor Brands. Look, I get it. You want to grow your business, but trying to sell to hundreds or even thousands of people gets very exhausting very fast. But what if you could sell at scale with a simple, powerful quiz? Score App helps you sell to more people without adding more to your plate. You build a quiz or assessment that your audience actually wants to take. Then they answer a few quick questions and get a personalized result right away. It shows them where they're at and what they need to do next and how you can help. And you build huge amounts of trust before you make even a single offer. No hard sell, no chasing leads, just value at scale. Get 50% off the first 3 months using the discount code SPI. All you have to do is just head to scoreapp.com/SPI. Again, that's scoreapp.com/SPI.